You may remember from yesterday that we finally have a theme. We're gonna like make this coherent maybe this week. At least as coherent as I'm ever going to be. So yesterday we talked about international relations and kind of had an IR 101, the basic definition of the field, and talking about how states and international organizations and other bodies all interact, and that's kind of the theory, you know, the point of international relations. Today, we're going to start going through the major schools of thought in international relations theory from an academic standpoint, but of course these also have very major policy implications. So, here we go. Rebecca Farnum, Ramblings with Rebecca. You know all that. Today, realism. Realism is a school of thought that believes that politics in the world are primarily governed and driven by competitive self-interest. States and humanity are inherently not benevolent, but instead self-centered and competitive. Mine, 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 mine. Think the seagulls in Finding Nemo. Mine, mine, mine. Okay, yeah, just crazy seagulls flying around just wanting as many crabs as they can get. The system is anarchic. There's no actor above the state that can somehow make them behave. It's, you know, squabbling siblings without any kind of parents. That's what states are in a, you know, strict realist kind of mindset. So you know, there's no actor above the state, and states are the head honchos. States, therefore, are the actors that matter most. They are, you know, the primary unit of analysis. So a realist is really going to focus almost entirely on the state level of analysis, rather than looking at, you know, like, and examining the middle class within a country, or, you know, thinking about how important the president as an individual might be. You know, it's the state is the level that really matters. Realists also assume that states are independent of each other and rational. They want what is in their self-interest, not for themselves. And they are not governed by each other or under each other, right? So there's an assumption that, like, you know, states are all states as a state separately. So, you know, there aren't any, you know, like, seagulls who love each other more. They're all just seagulls. This metaphor is going crazy. Oh well. And states are focused mostly on survival, and that's their primary governing self-interest bit, right? Which is why you get things like military and military dilemmas. So that's realism kind of in a nutshell. It's a bit pessimistic, I think, and has been critiqued as such, but beyond the pessimism, you know, there's also a lot of, okay, except that states aren't the only actors. You know, we have regional trade agreements, we have the United Nations, we have international law, we have the World Trade Organization, we have people in countries. Who the president is does seem to matter. We have religion, we have culture, we have food, we have trade. You know, there's all of these other things going around that seem to influence how people live in their world and what states' interests look like. There are states who don't always seem to do what is best for their survival, or who aren't completely greedy. So a realist would look at something like international aid and say, okay, that happens because the US giving aid money to Egypt wants to be able to control that region when it needs to in order to get oil. That kind of thing. Right, whereas someone from some of the other fields that we're going to look at might have a different perspective on that, or might say, yes, but also, and that kind of thing. So looking at, let me see, scholars of realism, kind of the epitome that probably most of you have heard of, think Machiavelli and the Prince. Okay, yeah, I mean, like, that's realism, right? I mean, just like the power, and, you know, get what you need to get what you need to get what you need to because you need it kind of thinking. Thomas Hobbes, for those of you who may have heard of that, in the Leviathan, writing about states' power, and this idea that, you know, the world is nasty and brutish and competitive, and before there were states, life was nasty, brutish, and short. And now humans have this contract with the state to provide security, but states have kind of, you know, become this big thing that have to be competitive in order to be secure. In more modern day politics, defining modern more or less relatively, people like Henry Kissinger, Richard Nixon, and Joseph Stalin are probably the three that most people will be aware of. Though they were realists in the way that they governed and saw the world. So that's realism. States are states and selfish little jerks.